Welcome, everyone, to today's episode. I'm Lisa Vanderkwaak, your host. And as always, today you're going to learn about how important it is for you to use your voice, because your voice is a vehicle for transformation. And yes, there are times when you do stand and speak the message that God has put on your heart to speak, there is a risk. There is a risk involved, and it may not be accepted by everyone. But the reward of sharing that message far outweigh the risk when you know that you are standing in your convictions, in what God has called you to do, and bringing hope and healing to the people that are willing to hear. And today's guest is one who used his voice to help bring about a change in his community and with a school board, and for the purpose of supporting the parents who asked him to. And yes, there was a risk. And today he's going to share all about what that journey was, how it all began, and the risk that was involved, but also the reward of knowing that he did what God had called him to do. So I want you to be empowered today with my guest as you hear his story. My guest today is Dr. Jeff Horak. Dr. Jeff, I'm going to welcome you on the screen. Hello.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here.
You're welcome. It's such a privilege and honor. I just want to formally introduce you. For those who don't know Dr. Jeff, he is a general surgeon and has been in clinical practice for 32 years, up until 6 weeks ago.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
When something happened that has flipped it all upside down, and he is going to share that with us today. But I wanted to have Dr. Jeff on today because he did something that I believe is really important for us to understand, is that there is truth, and that there, I was thinking about this the other day when there's a message out there in the world that says, speak your truth. And I personally don't believe that. I believe that we all have perceptions of experiences and things that happen, and that perception becomes a reality. But there's only one truth. There's an absolute truth, and our perception on that can vary. Our reality is yes, it's valid, but there's a truth that is an absolute truth, and that's rooted in what is actually happening. And so Dr. Jeff had the opportunity to speak truth, which ended up costing him his job. So, Dr. Jeff, tell us about what actually happened, how this story started, and it was parents that really asked you to do something.
Well, Lisa, first of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. This is a huge privilege for me, and it's a blessing to be actually considered somebody that you might want to talk to. And until probably 6 weeks ago, I would have thought nobody ever wanted to hear what I had to say. So one of the messages that will come through this, hopefully, is that there is power in what we say. And you have the rights to speak up and voice your opinion. And so how did this all start? Well, like you said, 32 years, for the last 32 years, I've been a general surgeon in two different communities. One in the community I trained, which was Detroit, Michigan, which is closer to Canada from where I am now. And then the last was after we were there about 18 years, and then moved to a smaller community in rural Minnesota called Dalton's, where we live, but it's Fergus Falls, Minnesota, which is where the school is. And I've been in practice there for 15 years, doing general surgery. And the situation that occurred was related again to COVID and masking kids. And the quick answer, or the quick story, is there was a school board meeting where they were deciding whether they were going to continue or stop a mask mandate for kindergartners through sixth grade. All right, so the little kids. And there were several proponents in my medical group of this board meeting, or were asked to speak at the board meeting. And my wife, straight up honest, I didn't want to go. No desire to go whatsoever. Not my concern. And my wife goes, well, it is kind of our concern. I said, we don't need kids in this school anymore. She says, well, we have friends who have grandchildren, and their kids are our friends, and this has an effect. And we know it has effect. So they asked me, along with my wife, to speak about the mask mandate. And so we did. Went there and talked. And my 6 minutes of fame have now resulted in me being heard all over the world, including now in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I talked on the Tucker Carlson show, Fox and Friends in the morning. I had 2 Newsmax interviews, multiple radio interviews, and several podcast things. And what was it about? It came down to simply me saying, I believe God put all of these kids in the control of their parents. He gave them as gifts to their parents and charges them to be responsible for them, to make decisions for them.
Yeah.
And I said to the school board, I said, for 32 years, I've been making life and death decisions. Every day, some of those decisions I make will have effects, and it could be somebody's life. And I said, so I'm here to give you how I make that decision. It was simply just my opinion of how I make decisions to help them, because I truly think that decision will have effect on some of the kids.
Yeah.
And there was actually a mom who talked about her special needs child in the school who has to go to speech therapy, who will have to wear a mask to have her face covered. And her mom said, I don't know how we can do this. I'm going to have to leave this school and then pay for all this. I'm a single mom. And so I use that information. It's like, that's a life and death decision you'll have to make for this mother and child. I said, that's a huge piece, and you need to know the severity of that. Yeah. So I gave them what I did. And so first of all, I talked to them about God. I said, I use my faith. I look to my maker, and your maker may be science, your maker may be Christianity, and each of us have a belief system. I said, use that belief system of what got you there. What made all the things that we see around us? I mean, you have to have some kind of component to that. And then look at that. But for me, it's Christianity and God. And I said, I look to my maker and I see what he teaches. I pray about what's going on. And then I use that information with all my experiences to make a decision. And then I make sure that decision lines up with his will. And that's how I act. And so I gave that to them. So I spoke for God. I spoke for parents' choice to make their decisions for their kids, both on and on masking up. Really, if people want to watch it, it's out there. It's a 6-minute video. It's on YouTube under my name. I mean, it's you'll find it because there's this old gray-haired guy standing side, pictures from the side in a scrub with a mask. Because I can't go to the hospital for this. So it's not hard to find. My 6 minutes of fame is right there.
Maybe I'll put the clip in here when I do the editing.
Yeah, that would be helpful for people. Yeah, they don't have to go work so hard. A lot of people have been doing that.
Yeah, I'll do that.
So, and then 9 days later, after that discussion, my peers, Lake Region Medical Group, the people who hired me, gave me a choice. I could be terminate or resign. And the information I was given for that was that my beliefs were no longer congruent with those of my employer. All the information I've had since it's now 6 weeks. So
wow. And I understand that, because of your contract, they don't have to give you a reason.
And you have to understand the board of my clinic that terminated me was the same board I was on. I was a member of that board. I've been on that board for 10 years. I know how this works. I have no expectation of finding out what view is, not congruent with theirs, and I'll never know. And that's just how that works. So,
yeah, there's a few things that I would just want to piggyback on. One is, it's interesting. I'm a former speech language pathologist, so that example that you use is very near and dear to me. And and I used to work with children, and so and I also have a friend who has a child in the system here in Canada where had to deal with that very same system, same situation, and was very, very disturbed that, and I think those are some of the areas that is not really looked at when it comes to the damage that's being done to our children. I mean, there's a whole lot of things we could talk about here, but we won't go. But one of the things I love what you said when you said right at the beginning with you and Debbie deciding to go to this board meeting was an objection that I think a lot of people have. Well, I know my kids are not little anymore, so they're not in the school system, and that's me personally. That I don't need to go and advocate for the kids in school. But you did. And I think this is a message that I think that we need to get out to the general population and public. It's,
Right.
you know what? Someone along the line fought for your kids when your kids were little to do. I know when my
Right.
kids were little, there were situations that happened that were people fighting that didn't have kids in the system. And so I
Yeah.
think this is a message that is really important, that we all play a part, because whether it be our kids or our grandkids or the future generation. So thank you for stepping up to that, as much as it cost you your position.
It's interesting. 5 days after I was fired, the mother group, the moms of our community who were instrumental in getting me there and getting my wife there, were just dumbfounded, and they created a Fight for Freedom rally. 5
Yeah.
days. They created a hashtag for me, which I still not 100% sure I know what a hashtag is. It's to me it looks like a pound sign, but that's
Yes.
all I know.
And what was the hashtag?
It says, "I stand with Dr. Horak."
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that, I don't know what that does, but I have a hashtag now.
Yay.
I also have, based on that, an Instagram account, which I still can't manage. But it has a list of like 27 different videos that we've been involved with since this. But one of the things that's important to me in this, and I go down this point, is I couldn't figure out why everybody was so up in arms about me getting fired. At this event, this freedom event, before we did it, I was supposed to speak. And my wife and I asked the community members why they were so up in arms. Why were they so mad that I got fired? And we got some huge responses. And I think this is part of the reason that it was so important to hear this piece, for people who are like, why did I go there? Why did he do this? Why would he ever do this? And so I got a list of responses. I just want to read you just a couple of these things. If you, is that all right? I mean, can I read you these?
Absolutely. Go right ahead. Yeah.
And then the last one's the big one, but it was kind of an accumulation of stuff. The first people says, we're mad because you were fired or punished for speaking a professional faith-based opinion for the people of this community and our kids. Right? So you went up there and you were fired for that. It says, one was because I lost a doctor I could trust to respect my opinion and who gives me the freedom to make my own medical decisions for myself and my family. The next one was, the big one was like, I'm mad because you went out of your way to speak on our behalf with genuine faith, compassion, from an educated point of view. And this is how your employer thanks you. And if they can do this to you, they can do this to anybody. And the last one that summed it up, which is what I kind of led with my speech, was, it said, finally, he said, you spoke up for God and our rights so that we could live our lives with faith, knowing God will take care of us, instead of the fear that has been pushed on us for the last several months. So it came out that they were angry, but they were afraid.
Yeah.
It was a fear-based thing. So that was one of the things that really gleaned to Deb and I, that was amazing, that people, it's just a fear. And we all kind of feel this. We know there's something not right.
Yeah.
There's just something in the world that isn't right.
Yeah.
We don't know what it is. So.
Yeah. And then that is so important to just to validate that, to listen to that knower inside of you when you feel like there's something is not right, and just to do the work to find out what is the truth and what is, just as much as we can. And now, thankfully, because of the internet, we do have access to a lot of information. We have to sift through it for sure. But the conspiracy is no longer a theory. There's a lot of factual information out there.
Yeah. One of the things that I was reading through this stuff is like, the difference between truth and conspiracy theory is usually 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, and that's about it.
That's where we're at.
Yeah, talking about, because you're talking about a mom's group, I don't know if you heard recently, Dr. Malone, I believe it was Dr. Malone I was listening to recently, and he made a comment about that it's going to be the angry moms that are going to turn the tide.
It will. It's what it's been here. I mean, these school board meetings, we've been reading and hearing about them for a long time, and we're part of a group that's called Patriot Street Fighters, something in the United States, about one man who just had a belief, and he's kind of pushed this belief for a long time. And one of the things that he came up with is to take back what's been happening, the freedoms that we're losing.
Yes.
Comes from the grassroots, and they're put in our schools. So the school board meetings have a huge deal. So, I mean, I've been listening to that, and then my wife goes, we should talk at the school board meeting. I'm like, well, I've been hearing this, but I just thought that was for other people who have kids in school. And
Yeah.
it's not. It really isn't. We all have a testimony. We all have an idea. We all have a thought. And at least in the United States, until the last 6 weeks, I thought that was all right to express your opinion. That's how we're founded. I mean, we have a Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
And, you know, the First Amendment of the Constitution talks about freedom of speech and to gather and freedom of religion.
Yeah.
I mean, that night of the school board, I talked about my freedom of speech, the freedom to worship my God, and the freedom of myself and every other person here to make decisions for their health and education of their kids and to assemble. We were an assembly. So I don't know what view would be against that for my peers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the most alarming thing. And we as Canadians have a similar foundation in terms of we're founded upon the principles of scripture. And so we're kind of joined at the hip in that regard for our two nations. And so the same is happening here. I mean, there's a doctor here. I don't know if you've heard of Dr. Nagase, who is a doctor in Alberta, which is where I live.
Oh, okay.
Who was let go because, well, he was fired. He was told he went into an emergency room. Like he was on emergency room call, and he went in on a weekend, and through his decisions was able to save 3 people's lives who were on death's. Yeah,
I didn't know he was in Canada. I didn't know where he was from, but I know that
exactly.
Yeah, I read that whole thing. It was amazing. You're like, that's exactly what you do. That's what you're trained to do.
Exactly.
And look,
so as a doctor, I mean, that's the other part of it is that you, even when you spoke about the masking and everything, it's like do no harm, right? So you're trying to help people understand that this is harmful. As a doctor, that's part of your oath.
Yeah, I mean, we have given up all of the rules of the past based on science and education and training and just the oaths we've taken.
Mm-hmm.
They've just fallen away for some other agenda that I just don't understand.
Yeah,
I can't come to grips with what my peers don't agree with that I say. I mean, I just don't understand. Mm-hmm. And yes, I can understand putting on a mask. I wore a mask, well, except for the last 6 weeks, I wore a mask every day of my life.
Yeah.
And for 32 years, I wore masks. That's what I did. It's not like I would ever consider walking into an operating room without a mask.
Mm-hmm.
When we go with a mask, we come out, we take it off.
Right.
But we know it has a purpose. That mask purpose is very different than when we're out in the community.
Right.
We have to wear the same mask forever and never unmask to have a protection. And that's for bacteria to help prevent wound infections.
Mm.
It's not designed to stop viruses. So it comes back to a fear. I mean, there's an underlying fear in all of this. And that's what I saw in those answers from the parents was like, we're fearful of our freedom being lost. And everybody's, the real truth fear for all of us is somebody's going to die because I'm having a cold and I spread it to somebody else and they get the cold. The truth is we're all going to die. Mm-hmm. That is not going to change.
Yeah.
And it's about where your faith is.
Yeah.
You know, how do you put faith over that fear? Well, how does that work? And that was one of the things that we talked about already, that I gave the school board a way to make those decisions. When you have to make a decision that could paralyze you, when your fear is so severe that you're paralyzing your decisions, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
What we talked about. So I still think getting rid of that fear, putting your faith over, finding something to control that is what you need.
Yeah, that's so important. That's such a good word. I remember right at the beginning of this whole pandemic, the Lord, and I was like wrestling with some of the stuff going on, and the Lord just said, you know, the scripture where it talks about if you can't do it in faith, then you're actually in sin. If I'm doing something out of fear, then it's actually not going to produce good results in me or things. So I had to really stand in that. It's difficult, and it's just like you as well. And so that's a great word. One of the other things I wanted to kind of go back to is the fight for parents. And you talked about parents. And right now in Canada, we've had some wins on different levels with this Families for Choice that I'm a part of, in
Okay.
terms of them not mandating, meaning you can't keep children out of the school system because they don't have a vaccine. So right now, that's kind of the biggest thing that
Sure.
the fight is. But also, we've had a number of wins in British Columbia where parents went to the school board meetings, parents and teachers, and served them what's called a notice of liability.
Absolutely. That's the
And
best thing you can do, because it takes the onus on the board. It puts them like, you have to understand you're taking my right and responsibility away from my kids and you're assuming it. So I want you to know what that full measure means. The full measure is that you're responsible for all of these things. We put you on notice. And
yeah,
back down right at that. I heard that they just,
yeah, we've had about 20 school boards who have kind of turned back and said, no, okay, we're not going to mandate this because it is a very legal situation that they're putting themselves in. So I just want you I would like you to speak to the parents. And first of all, I would like to know, do you regret what you did?
well, until yesterday, I'd say no. And then yesterday, here's the deal.
The
I
truth,
get
yeah.
I get paid every month, and yesterday I didn't
Yeah.
get paid. I'm like, oh my gosh. Before then it was like, yeah, and we'll be fine. That's not that. But that was the only
Yeah.
time I thought for a few minutes. It's like, God, why? How am I going to make this work? And it's like, this has been a huge faith walk for me.
Yeah.
From the beginning, and God he talks to me, and he's already told me, he said, now that you trust me, because when I went down those stairs, you can't see it, but there's a huge set of stairs in that video. And each step I was like, why am I here? Why am I here? What am I doing? I shouldn't be doing this. There is no reason I should be doing this. Yet it was like, you're going. I told you to go. You listen to me. You need to go do this. And when I got down in the front, if you look right at the beginning, I say, why am I here? And I look up. And the next thing I remember, I'm walking up the steps out of the auditorium, and everybody's standing up and cheering and clapping. And the guy at the top of the steps goes, nice job. You did great. And I absolutely had no idea what I physically said until I watched the lyric. The Holy Spirit just came right through me. And God's come to me and said, you trust me now. I know that you trust me. So go where I'm leading you. And so, no, I wouldn't do anything different. I mean, the amount of input, the care and the kindness, the people who've reached out to my wife and I in our community. I mean, within 5 days, I had a rally. Freedom. I had the governor who's the physician who's running for the governor of the state of Minnesota reached out to me. He showed up at our freedom event. He talked for me. I went from there to 2 radio stations, to 2 Newsmax interviews, Fox and Friends, Tucker Carlson. I mean, you've reached out to me. I mean, why would you ever reach out to me? We don't. Yes, we know you know my wife.
I know your wife.
I mean, a lot of people know my wife.
Yeah.
So what's happening is this is God's message to his people, and I'm just a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
So
And
I would not do anything different at all.
awesome. Thank you. So thank you for that. And thank you for allowing yourself to be a mouthpiece and for just following the prompting of the Holy Spirit, even though you didn't know what you're getting yourself into.
And every day is like that. I mean, I have no idea what today's going to bring.
Yeah. And people are looking for, what I've learned is people want to follow leaders. They want to follow strong leaders in terms of someone to rally behind. And so sometimes when they feel like they don't have a way to change a situation, they want to get behind people who maybe do or have a voice in that situation. And I find that is why it's so important that we all have a part to play, because some people may not be the ones speaking to the school board, but some may be, and others are going to rally behind them and support them in that regard, or to speak to some other part of society. So I just want to thank you for your obedience and for your courage, even after the fact of realizing what you were doing.
Well, and I would echo that statement. It was like, I didn't do this by myself. I mean, I got here based on a whole bunch of people behind the scenes putting all this information out. It really, if you have Instagram and you want to see it, these moms have created something that's just amazing. I didn't know Instagram could be such a powerful tool. But everything is there recorded for anybody to look at. And there's people who follow me. It's like they follow me. What does that mean? They go there and they get it. And I get comments on Messenger and on Facebook and text and emails all the time. And I expect I will get more just from what you and I are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And my message is, yes, I'm educated. Yes, I have the ability to speak on masks because I've worn one for 32 years. You have to understand, when COVID started here, I was a believer. I put an N95 mask. I put another mask. I had a shield over the front of me. All of these things are no longer being done. All right.
Yeah.
So the message that we got at the beginning and where we are now is very different.
Yes.
I talked at that Freedom event for people to learn how to empower themselves.
Mm.
Right? And yet, the first thing is you have to ask good questions and educate yourself. All right. And all of it's out there. The internet has allowed us to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the current internet is that it is being censored.
Yes.
You have to go to places that are not censored. So you do your searches on DuckDuckGo, at least in the United States. I don't know if that's a world. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so
Same.
DuckDuckGo. And then you ask good questions and you go to places that will give answers. And if you don't believe it's being censored, find the answer on DuckDuckGo and then go back to Google or Siri, all the other places, and see if it's the same answer. And why is YouTube, taking things down? Go to BitChute and Rumble and Telegram. Those are places you can find information. So I put a plug in for all those because that's what I told the people in the community to do.
Yeah.
And then find people, doctors, clinicians, friends, that you can trust. People say, well, where do you go for your information? I used to, for my healthcare, whenever I want to know something, first of all, I'm not a doctor. I'm a surgeon. Okay. So I don't know what treats your blood pressure or what medicine do this or how I can cut things out.
Right.
And I can and I know narcotics and antibiotics. That's pretty much what I'm trained. So I'm skewed in that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably what kept me from being pulled down the path that everybody else went down to. But I'd ask my wife because she knew, or I'd call my mom or grandma. Find people you can trust who've gone through this before. We go,
Mm-hmm.
There's something not right here. I've never seen the government ever do any of these things.
Yeah.
So, look for that, and have faith. That's one of the things. So empower yourself, know where to research, get your research, and ask your questions. And then don't lose your voice because, yes, you may not be talking to a big group,
Mm-hmm.
but big groups are created out of one or two people going together, each having the same similar idea or thought. So as you speak to your neighbor or your friend and you have these conversations
Mm-hmm.
in the coffee house or whatever you guys do up in Canada, your opinion, my opinion, we go back and forth. We do it in a loving, caring, friendly, spiritual way, inviting the Holy Spirit in. And, so God is working in that. And then we take that message, we come up with an understanding, and we may agree to disagree, but we're still the same humans.
Yeah.
We're still on the same planet. We're not going to kill you. I believe there's a war here. This is a war. We see casualties all over the place. You can't look without seeing casualties. You can't pick up anything in the paper or the news and not see casualties. There's no bullets, there's no guns, but it's a war.
Yeah.
And it's a war between good and evil. And if you go with what Christ teaches in a loving, honest, empathetic, caring, Christ-like manner with your friends, you'll create an army.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're creating, an army for the war. And you'll go forward. And remember, there is no back. The armor of God does not have anything to cover your backside. It is a frontward battle. It's always forward, always forward. And the last thing I'll throw out, which I put in the speech, was that remember, God's already won. God wins. God wins, God wins, God wins. 3 times. Holy, holy, holy.
Yes.
That important. God wins. And just put that in there and you'll sleep fine at night.
Yeah. That's so good.
He'll get you through.
That is so good that we are on the winning team.
Yep.
And I love that scripture because I was just thinking about that myself in terms of Ephesians. And it says, when you've done everything else you can, keep standing.
Yep.
Keep standing, clothed in the full armor, but moving forward. I love that. I love
Always
that. Forward. Well, thank you so much Dr. Jeff. What a privilege to have you on.
Sure.
And
My pleasure. Again, absolute blessing. And I thank you for the work you do. I mean, because it's people like you who reach the masses. And there's people want to know. They want to know where to look. And so you're one of those people. You are in the battle. Now you've joined on our army too. Just get
yes,
out. So, in Canada, you guys are close. You can make this work.
yes,
We all are fighting the same fight, good versus evil. And God will win. He's taking you there. He's taking us all there.
yes.
And it'll be amazing
It
with
is.
the side.
Yeah. It is. It is. I feel like we're kind of on the precipice. It's kind of like when the children of Israel were left Egypt and they were being chased by this
Yeah.
army. And there's so much to say. Oh, let's just give up and give. We're going to be
Right.
doomed. Why did we leave? And I feel like we're kind of in that tension zone right now as our nations, where the promised land is right in front of us.
And then what happens? God goes, use your voice. And Moses and the water separated. The power of voice of Moses, with God at the lead, took the people to the promised land.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What a lovely thing to end on. Well, thank you again, Dr. Jeff, and your beautiful wife, Debbie. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence and for, again, standing for truth. And we are in this battle together as Canadians and Americans. We, as Christians, more than anything, as Christians, we're in this battle. It's a worldwide battle. But for sure, we are going to continue to pray for your nation, as I'm sure you're praying for our nation and the people here to rise up. So thank you and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you too. Again, it's truly a blessing. Bye-bye.
I hope you felt empowered today by the message, by the story of Dr. Jeff Horak, but also by the message that your voice is a vehicle for transformation. And today, in this time in history that we are in, it is now our job to fight. It's our job to fight for the freedoms that so many lives were lost years ago. They fought for the freedoms that we have today. And those freedoms are right now are being threatened. And so you and I are responsible for not letting that happen, for not letting those freedoms being taken away. So I want to encourage you, you're not alone. We're in this together. And as we stand together and strategically move forward to bring about the changes that we know are needed and to hold that place as we stand in faith and keep standing our ground, it will be worth it. The rewards will be great because we are on the winning team. And you want to be able to sleep at night. I know I do, knowing that we did everything we could. Well, just like Dr. Horak said, I want to encourage you to ask good questions, do your research, and use your voice. Don't just take what comes your way. When you know there's something not right, ask good questions, do your research to find out the answers on those alternative search engine that's going to give you more accurate information. And then ask good questions, do your research, and use your voice, because your voice is a vehicle for transformation and it's meant to be heard. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.